Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to be diving into a set of verses from the Quran that, can be pretty challenging, even a little jarring when you first read them. But by looking closer at the context, I think we're going to uncover some really profound lessons about integrity and faith. So let's jump right in. All right, so this is the verse at the heart of our whole discussion from the ninth chapter. It's a command to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, to strive against the disbelievers and the hypocrites and be harsh upon them. Now that phrase, be harsh, it really stands out, doesn't it? It immediately makes you ask an important question. What does it really mean to be harsh here? I mean, is this a call for aggression or is there something much, much deeper going on? That question is going to be our guide as we piece this whole puzzle together. And we're going to get there by looking at four key things. First, the difficult command itself, then the whole issue of false oaths, how character gets tested, and finally, this idea of divine accountability. Okay, first up, a difficult command. To really get this verse, we need to know two things. Who exactly is being talked about? And what do these key words actually mean? So the first big clue is who the command is aimed at. It's not just disbelievers, it's also the munafiqeen, the hypocrites. Now, this points to an internal threat. We're talking about people who claim to be part of the community, but were secretly working to undermine it from the inside. And that distinction, it's absolutely crucial. And that brings us to that phrase, be harsh. When you dig into the original Arabic, وَغْلَظْ عَلَيْهِمْ, scholars are pretty clear that this isn't talking about physical violence. It's about firmness. It's a command for a leader to be resolute, to have moral clarity when dealing with those who are trying to sabotage the community. In other words, it's about principled leadership, not personal aggression. So part 2, unmasking false oaths. If this command is really about dealing with internal deceit, well, how did that deceit actually show up? The verses immediately show us the number one tactic of the hypocrites, this huge gap between what they said and what they actually did. And here's the core of the issue, right here in a nutshell. Verse 74 tells us the hypocrites would swear by God that they'd done nothing wrong. But the reality, they had spoken the word of disbelief. This stark contrast between their public oaths and their private actions, well, that's the very definition of the hypocrisy being called out here. Part 3, the test of character. Okay, so if words can be so deceiving, how is real character revealed? The verses suggest the answer isn't in what we say, but in how we react to life's ups and downs, the good times and the bad. What's really fascinating here is that the verses lay out this whole behavioral pattern, almost like a playbook. It starts with a promise to God, but it's totally conditional, right? If you bless me, then I'll be charitable. Then, step 2, the blessing comes. And what happens? They get stingy. And then, when they face a hardship, instead of having patience, they rebel and turn away. It just reveals a faith that's completely based on personal gain. And then you see this stark contrast with how a true believer is described, because their character stays constant. They're generous when they're blessed, and they're patient when they're tested. It's this consistency through both the good and the bad that the verses are pointing to as the real sign of sincere faith. And this brings us to our final piece of the puzzle, divine accountability. After showing us the actions of hypocrisy, the verses now turn to the ultimate consequences. We're moving from the social realm to the spiritual one. Verse 77 really connects all the dots. It says the consequence for breaking their promises and for all their lying is a spiritual one, a hypocrisy that gets kind of sealed in their hearts. See, it's not some arbitrary punishment. It's a direct result of their own actions. So why is this accountability just inevitable? Well, verse 78 gives us the answer with this incredibly powerful question. The hypocrites might think their secrets are safe, but the ultimate accountability is divine, because nothing is hidden from God. And that's both a reassurance for believers and a final powerful warning against deceit. So let's bring it all together. What have we learned? That command to be harsh isn't about aggression. It's about firm leadership against internal sabotage. We saw that hypocrisy is really defined by that gap between our words and our actions. True character, we've learned, is revealed by how we act consistently in both good times and bad. And finally, accountability is certain because absolutely nothing is hidden from the divine. So we'll end with a question that these verses pretty much force us to ask ourselves. If words alone aren't the measure of our faith, then what is? The text really suggests the answer lies in the consistency of our character and the simple integrity of our actions. Thank you so much for exploring that with me today.